The Internet was never designed to be secure.
Secure.
The Internet was never designed to be secure. Everything you've been sold, the firewalls, the antivirus, the cloud dashboards, they're all patches on a foundation that was never built to protect you in the first place. And once you understand why, cybersecurity starts to make a completely different kind of sense. Let's go back, way back, to 1969. The U.S. Department of Defense funds a project called ARPANET, the world's first packet switch network. The goal was brilliant and completely reasonable for its time: connect a handful of research universities and military installations so they could share data. The engineers who built it were not thinking about billions of users. They were not thinking about online banking. They weren't thinking about medical records or power grids or your home security cameras. They were only thinking about reliability. Could a system be designed that a packet of data survives a partial network failure and still finds its destination? That was the problem that they solved, and they solved it elegantly. What they were not thinking about at all was trust. The early Internet was a closed club. Everybody on the network was a researcher or a government official with a clearance. You didn't need to verify who you were talking to. Everyone was supposed to be trustworthy by definition. Fast forward 5 decades, that same fundamental architecture, designed for a closed club of researchers, now carries the entire nervous system of modern civilization. Your bank, your hospital, your power grid, your supply chain, your government services, all of it running on a foundation that was designed before the concept of a hostile actor on the network was even considered to be a real problem. That is not a flaw that was introduced later. That is the original architecture. And understanding that single fact changes how you think about every cybersecurity problem that you'll ever encounter. So, what does it actually mean that the Internet wasn't designed for security? Let me break this down concretely, because this is not just philosophy. The core protocols in the Internet have no native trust. The foundational protocols, IP, TCP, DNS, BGP, were built on the assumption that the participants were honest. There is no native mechanism for a computer to prove that it is who it claims to be. None. DNS, the domain name system, the Internet's phone book, was designed to translate human-readable addresses into machine-readable ones. It's not designed to verify that the address it gives you actually belongs to who you think it does. BGP, the Border Gateway Protocol, is what routes Internet traffic between networks globally. Major Internet service providers and network operators use it to say traffic for this block of addresses should go this way. It has been exploited repeatedly because there is no cryptographic verification that the entity claiming to own that address space actually does. These are not bugs. These are architectural decisions made in a different era for a different world. When the Internet started expanding into commercial territory in the late 1980s and through the 1990s, the security problems became impossible to ignore. So what happened? Engineers started building security on top of the existing architecture. SSL, then TLS, then DNSSEC, and firewalls, intrusion detection systems, antivirus systems, two-factor authentication. All of these exist not because the underlying Internet is secure, but because it's not. Every year, billions of dollars are spent essentially maintaining a patchwork of security tools on top of a foundation that was never designed to support them. And every year, adversaries find new ways through the gaps between those patches. Now, here's where I want to say something that the technology industry does not want you to hear. The cloud is not a solution for this problem. It's an extension of it. When a vendor sells you cloud security, what they really are selling you is their patchwork on that same broken foundation, with one critical difference. Your data is now sitting on infrastructure you don't own, in a data center you can't physically walk into, under a contract that was written by their lawyers, not yours. Your core information, the data that is genuinely critical to your operation, your intellectual property, your sensitive customer records, that data needs to be somewhere that you have real, physical, audible control over. Now, cloud providers, not all are incompetent. Some of them are very good at what they do, but because at the end of the day, security is ultimately about control, and when you put your critical assets in someone else's infrastructure, you've ceded that control to them. Good cybersecurity hygiene starts with knowing where your data is and being able to answer one question. If I need to verify the security of this system right now, could I? And if the answer is, have to ask somebody else, you've got a serious problem. So what does all this actually mean? Let's look at 3 different layers. Governments around the world are realizing, slowly, in many cases, and far too late, that critical national infrastructure runs on an architecture that was never designed to be defended at scale. Their power grids, water treatment facilities, financial clearing systems, air traffic control systems, these systems were connected to the internet because it was convenient and inexpensive. The internet was already there, so why build a separate network? That logic made sense on a spreadsheet in 1998. However, it's a national security crisis in 2026. The adversaries who understand this, and make no mistake, the major nation-state cyber actors absolutely understand this, are not trying to hack your firewall. They're studying the architecture seams and the underlying infrastructure, because that is where the real vulnerabilities lie. Governments that are serious about cyber defense are not buying more security tools. They're asking hard questions about network segmentation, about what should and should not be on the internet, and about whether this convenience of being on the public internet is worth the exposure. For companies, and this applies whether you're running a 50-person business or a global enterprise, the architecture reality of the internet has a very practical implication. Cybersecurity is not fundamentally a technology problem. It's a business problem that happens to live in a technical world. Every breach you've read about in the past 10 years, every major ransomware attack, every data exfiltration, every compromised supply chain, they all had a technical component, but at the root, they were almost always caused by a business decision, an unpatched system that was too expensive to update, a vendor given more network access than the contract required, a critical process that nobody thought to monitor because it had never failed before. The most effective cybersecurity programs I see are not built upon the latest detection technologies and tools or the most expensive platforms. They're built around fundamentals, patching, network segmentation, monitoring, knowing what's on your network and what it's talking to. Boring? Yes. Effective? Absolutely. Because the adversary is not looking for a fight with your cutting-edge security stack. They're looking for a system that was too old to patch, an account that still had default passwords, the monitoring gap that nobody noticed. Good security hygiene is not glamorous, but it eliminates the majority of the attack surface before the sophisticated stuff even gets relevant. Here's the uncomfortable long-term truth. We're not going to replace the internet's underlying architecture. It's too deeply embedded, too globally distributed, too foundational to the entire modern economy to rebuild from scratch. What we're going to see instead is a series of parallel structures built on top of or alongside the existing architecture. More cryptographic verification at the protocol level, zero trust models that assume that the network cannot be trusted and verify every transaction independently, sovereign networks for critical infrastructures that are physically isolated from the public internet. The trajectory is towards a world where we stop pretending that the internet is secure and start engineering systems as if it fundamentally is not. That actually is the right mental model. It's just taking us about 50 years to get to it. The organizations and individuals who thrive in that future are the ones who understand this now and who start making decisions accordingly today. Here's the idea I want to leave you with. We tend to think of cybersecurity as a war between defenders and attackers, good guys versus bad guys, better tools versus worse tools, bigger budgets versus smaller budgets. But the deeper truth is, cybersecurity is really a story about the gap between a world a technology was designed for and the world it actually ended up in. The internet was designed for a world of trusted researchers sharing academic papers. It ended up carrying the financial systems, the power grids, the supply chains of every major economy on Earth, and the personal communications of 8 billion people. Every technology we use carries the assumption of the world it was designed in. When those assumptions stop being true, vulnerabilities always appear. That's why staying genuinely informed about technology matters is critical. Not just reading press releases or listening to vendors who are trying to sell you a product, but actually understanding the underlying architecture and its real constraints. The gap between what a technologies company tell you about security and what is actually true at the architectural level is significant. And the people who understand that gap are the ones who make better decisions for their organizations, for their families, and for all the systems we depend upon. That is what this channel is about. Not selling you a tool, not giving you a certification, but understanding the real state of things and thinking clearly about what it means. If this kind of thinking is what you want more of, the actual forces shaping cybersecurity, the architecture behind the headlines, and the decisions that actually matter, subscribe. Next video, we're going to talk about why perfect cybersecurity is mathematically impossible and what that means for every security decision you'll ever make. I'll see you there.
System breach detected. Initializing defense protocols.